Hello team, in this week's lesson I'm going to show you how to paint a beetle. This is incredibly satisfying to do. Technically it can be quite challenging, but all you need to do is watch the steps and make sure you slow down when you're painting. We're going to be doing a lot of wet on damp, so not quite wet on wet where it's soaking. It just needs a little bit of dampness to help blend the edges, and you'll see why wet on dry doesn't work so well because I make that mistake. So grab your paints and let's get started. Okay team, make sure you have everything before you start. You need your watercolor palette. Of course, you can use tubes if you want, but I prefer these palette types. Then you need watercolor paper. Do make sure it's not normal paper, followed by a brush, a pencil, an eraser, it's not chalk, and a water jar and an old rag or a kitchen towel. Let's start with the outline. So to make life easier for myself, I'm just going to draw a line down the middle, and then I want to chop the top off and figure out roughly where the bottom is and where the top of the stomach is. So the tiny head is just going to go on top of there, but for now I just want to focus on this. So I'll get the, what would this be, shoulder, and then just pop that in there. You'll notice that the shoulders kind of come off the belly, which the more I look at it, the more creepy I realise it is. You want to make sure they're pretty much the same size. And then we'll just do a little gap under the shoulders, creepy little gaps, followed by straight lines that go down, and then it starts to curve. Okay, just missed that, but I actually think this is a better proportion. And the center line, not quite in the middle. So just tidy that up. Good. And then let's get this pesky little brain. Brain. Pincers, little mouth pincers. Cool. And let's add all these little leggies or antennae. I like that. There. Some hands. Funny, aren't they? If you think of them as hands, it's actually quite hilarious. Get some spiky elbows. We've all got some spiky elbows, especially when we don't moisturise. And then some braids. Braid around this side. And the back legs. So this one, I'm actually just going to draw the main shape first. It's very close to the other leg, and then let's not worry too much about the hairs. We do them right at the end. So these bits do make me feel a bit sick. But I decided to paint it, so deal with it, China. Deal with it. Okay, there we go. Very creepy beetle. So grab some scrap paper and we're going to try a few different colour tests to make sure we're happy with what we're about to paint. Okay, so there's a lot of blues and a lot of purples. So my first task really is to figure out what my blues look like. So make sure you've got enough paint. Just prepare that in your palette lid and then just paint yourself a little square. Or blob. And let's do the same with the other one. Okay, so two quite different blues. We've got a warmer one, which means it's more towards red, and a cooler one, which means it's more towards blue. And if you don't understand what on earth I'm talking about, definitely watch a little video about colour theory. We also have a purple in here, so I'm gonna go for the purple in my palette. And then I'm going to make a purple with both of those blues. So let's get red down here. And I'll mix that in. So I'm going to pop that there. Get that red and mix that in with the other blue. Okay, nice. So two very different purples as well. I'd say that these two are fairly similar. This one is a little bit more electric. So what I want to do is really think about which blues, which purples look the best in the highlighted section. This blue for me looks pretty good. And I would say, I actually do think that purple is more appropriate. So make sure you know which ones you used to make those two. Circle it, write notes, whatever you need. And let's try and get the deep dark blue. So I might try and just stick with this color so it's in the same family. And I'm going to add a little bit of red. So let's just see what that looks like. Oh, that is good. Okay, and then let's add a bit of black. And I'll see a little bit of red again. That is nice. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with those two. This one will be a highlight in the shadows, and this will eventually try and be the dark shapes within the beetle. If you've not quite got the colours that I've got, just spend an extra few minutes trying to kind of get there. If they're not going to be the same, they may not be the same base blue, but just think, is this a bright, cool blue, or is this more of an earthy blue that's a bit like daytime? So try and think really neon royal blues, and that will really help you with your decisions. I'm going to try and make life a little bit easier for myself and just draw where the highlights are. So I'll give myself a little barrier to say darks only, lights only. So that middle line is quite important because we can see it on the beetle. To be honest, everything else, a little highlight there, tiny highlight there, tiny highlight there. Yeah, everything else is pretty much in color. So I think what I'm actually going to do for these two is a little bit of masking fluid. If you don't have masking fluid, you absolutely should buy some because it's really fun. It's a bit like a scratch card, but with, I don't know what it is, like a plastic paint. Just be careful when you use it that you don't destroy your brushes. So when you're dipping in your masking fluid, paint a little bit and clean your brush in water straight away. You can get other tools to prevent this, but I think what's the point in buying loads of new equipment? Instead, just try and be a bit careful that you don't put too much on your brush and you clean it regularly. Masking fluid helps to create a barrier between the paint and the paper. So if you want to keep something white, put some masking fluid on top, and then at the end of the painting, peel it off, which is really easy, and you'll be left with the white of the paper, which is pretty sick. All right, you do have to work very quick with masking fluid because you don't want it to dry on your brush. So we'll just get a little bit along here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and I'm just going to clean my brush in between because honestly it dries so quick, so it's not worth dipping back in and just seeing if it stays wet, because it won't. Do you know what, I think I will just add a couple of little flecks on the legs. Let's do same again down here. Again, clean my brush in between. And then let's do a final couple of dots at the top. There we go. So that's going to dry super quickly, which means we don't have to worry about waiting. For our first layer, just take each quadrant at a time, because what you don't want to do is paint the whole thing and realize that that massive line is drying at the top but not the bottom. Try and use the outlines of the quadrant so that you have a barrier to almost fall into and rest, and then do the next one when you're ready. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a base layer of the blue. So probably going to go for this one. Actually, I'm going to go for in between these two. So it's blue, a little bit of black, a little bit of red. So let me get that color ready. Blue, there's a little bit of red in there, a little bit of black, just get a tiny bit more red. And a bit more water because I don't want it to be too dark. And then because it's small, I'm just going to go wet on dry. There we go, and then I'm just going to clean my brush and use a slightly damp brush just to soften that middle. So I'm just trying to make sure it doesn't have any harsh lines. which there's a tiny one. Anyway, let's do the same down here. So before I move on to the other side, I'm just gonna use a slightly damp brush. There we go, China. Can paint. And then let's go for this side. And there we go. And then, of course, let's get... Ooh, ah! Gosh. Let's get the legs as well. Perfect. Alright, let's check if it's dry. Pretty much dry, which is great. I'm going to start with the really dark blue. So this one over here is so rich, so dark. So I want my paint to be nice and thick. Add a touch of red. More blue. Oh, yeah. Okay. And then I'm just gonna go for it. So I want to just try and get that black shape, which is really good. And then I'm using a damp brush just to quickly wet the edges before it dries. Again, clean the brush. Just do that again. That gets to that central line. So for this area underneath, I actually think I might just dampen the edges first, because it's a bit too big, so that means it's going to have to move a lot quicker. Make sure I've got enough paint, so I'll just quickly make a bit more paint. Let's go for that again. Nice, so that's connecting the paint a bit better. So we'll just go along the edge. Good, and I will just want that to dry a little bit. So let's move across. So let's dampen this side just because there's more going on, and we do have a light bit, so I do want to leave a little bit white. So I've just made underneath a bit more damp. And first of all, we do have that darker color, so it's not dark enough, but I'm going to build it up in layers. So add that dark color, and then let's get that purple, which was red with that blue, and then we can just go in there. And it does have a touch of red, so let's just try and soften this with some clean water. Bit of blue down here, and there we go. And then the right side, which should still be damp, but if not, add a bit more dampness to it. Just gonna add that darker blue. Nice. So I just want to watch out that it's not soaking into this area, so just make sure that's clean. All right, and then let's do the same for this quadrant. So let's get this dark color, really nice dark blue. Whoa. And then let's just go along this edge. Just trying to pull it away from this pool that it's creating. Ugh. I'm just going to soak up some of that. Okay, good. So we'll let that dry. Let's work on some legs whilst we give the torso a bit of time to dry. And yeah, it needs a lot of work. All right, let's get that rich blue again. And we're just going to go for the darker parts of the leg. First. Let's just get rid of these splodges. Whoops. It might have to become part of the, the style for the background. That's not too bad, actually. Okay. Alright, so let's just get these on. So you'll notice how I'm dabbing the paint rather than painting it. It's just to make sure it's nice and thick. And then what I'll do is I'll just come out a little bit just to make it easier. And then let's do the same for this one. I think adding the legs actually makes it look very, very good. All right, so let's come back to this section. We basically want to repeat it, but make it better, make it darker, because when things dry, and if they have a damp background, obviously this side didn't, but when they do, it just makes them a little bit lighter. So all I want you to do now is just continue what we were doing before and just repeat it. So this time I'm just going to make sure everything's a bit damp underneath so that it's very soft. And I'm going to try and push the colours even further. So this dark needs to be nearly black. And then there is like a bit of a dark line around it. So ideally, it needs to be just really close. And that, oh, look at the difference there. Obviously it's wet, so it will look way better, but I'm just gonna clean and dry my brush and just see if I can soak that up so that the underneath colour shows through and has a really nice glow to it. I think I kind of want to skip the neighbour just to give that a chance to dry, and we don't pull the colours in, so I'm actually just going to do the same for the bottom. These two are pretty much the same anyway because they're both on the left, very similar in shape, so let's go down this time instead. Look at the difference there. Oh, okay, so you can see it's very, very damp, both top and bottom, but the top has had a bit of time to dry. So I'm gonna head over to the right hand side and start this one. I can leave a thin gap actually because there is slight glow on the spine, so that is actually helpful. So let's just add that darker bit here, and then this darker section there. And then just a little bit of purple down here. And a little bit of the pure blue. Pure blue in the middle as well. Okay, good. And then I'm just gonna soak it up. So then let's move down. Let's get the dark. And then let's get the pure. Followed by a bit of purple. It does need a little bit more of the pure blue. There we go. And then let's just try and blend those together. Okay. There is a bit of a triangle up here, so I wonder if I can add that on. Okay, it's probably better to do that one once it's dry. And then let's do these other parts of the legs. So they are a little bit more blue. So what I'll do is I'm going to add this like electric blue first. Whoops. And I'm going to make sure you don't ruin the lovely painting underneath. Okay. I'm going to have to avoid that one. Just for now, I'll come back to it. So let's actually hit this one. And then I'm going to get pure black. Just add a few dots. So hopefully we'll end up seeing both. So let's do the same on the rest of the legs. Oh, it would help if I added some colour. That's a good electric blue there. And then a few splotches of black. Nice, so let the legs dry and then let's go to the head. Okay, this is a complicated shape, so I'm just going to ignore it all. There are some golden eyes, so I'm going to get yellow ochre, thick yellow ochre first, and just plop these on here. So my right side making a tiny bit lighter, left side a little bit darker. And then that dark blue that we keep using. Just gonna go around, try not to touch the gold, but if it does, it does. I feel like I'm dancing with the devil there. And then a little bit in the brain. So the darkest part is on the left. You can leave a couple of little gaps if you want. And then I'm just gonna go for blue with a tiny bit of red. Just gonna go to this side and let that dry. So I have just come back to this and I thought, wow, this looks so good. So making sure that things dry, giving yourself a little break, coming back to it absolutely is a really good way to reset, especially if you're frustrated, which I know some of you are. So have a little break, come back to it and realize what you've done, which is fucking great. Okay. So all I think this really needs is for the darks to be pushed darker. So once yours is dry, have a look at it, see whether yours needs another layer or whether you're happy with it. Maybe you've gone dark enough straight away. I am definitely going to go one more layer, but then it's pretty much done. And the final part is just to remove the masking fluid. So skip this section if you don't need to do another layer. And I'll show you how to do the masking fluid, or do another layer with me, and then we can reveal those little glowy highlights together, which is so bloody satisfying. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes now just getting these darks really dark. That's going to look amazing. And then we'll be ready to finish the piece. All right, team, whilst that's drying, I'm just going to check my legs and see if they're dry. If they are, I just want to really gently rub to get the masking fluid off. So I'm not having to peel or use any force. I'm literally just gently stroking the paper, and eventually that masking fluid just finds its way off the paper. If you find your paint's coming off and you're ripping the painting that you've done underneath, it means that you're pushing too hard. So please don't be tempted to push too hard. Just gently let that friction build up, and it will really easily, really naturally. And then we can just see these gorgeous, gorgeous little highlights. And there we go. Doesn't that look banging? So there we have it, a 3D Beatle full of colour, full of life, and hopefully something that you're really proud of. Remember, things always look better the next day, so if you're not quite happy with it today, just sleep on it and come back to it tomorrow, because I promise you, you're going to enjoy it then. Thanks for watching me, folks, and I hope to see you in the next class.